And so, okay, we are live. And I can't tell. Hello, Kelly.
Hi, Shelley, Spicy Soul Mama, in live and in person.
Yeah.
Nice.
So awesome to meet you. And so we were just talking a minute. And so we love Substack for supporting writers and authenticity. And so we thought that we would have a conversation based on a quote from Flannery O'Connor. So why don't I just read that quote and then we can riff from there. And anybody who's joining, hi Franny and Marilyn, jump in to comment or share whatever. And hi, Janet, whoever wants to comment. So here's the quote that prompted this conversation that Kelly posted this week in notes. So um, Flannery O'Connor wrote, "Where you come from is gone. Where you thought you were going to was never there. And where you are is no good unless you can get away from it. Where is there a place for you to be? No place. Nothing outside you can give you any place. In yourself right now is all the place you've got." So, Kelly, tell me, how did you find this quote and maybe just what prompted you to post this?
Well, it was just the timing. It was a perfect time. I've been a Flannery O'Connor fan and reader. I really love her work. And that's a quote from Wise Blood. And I ran across it recently when I was watching a movie about Bruce Springsteen. And in that movie, which is excellent, by the way, I highly recommend it.
Yeah.
That was quoted by Flannery, and I was like, "Oh yes, I love that so much." And I made a note, and I do, I'm a big reader, so I'm constantly, you know, highlighting or making note or screenshotting quotes all the time. So you never know; it's always a matter of synchronicity, and that just seemed like the moment for that quote. So that's why I decided to post it on notes.
It really just set me off and in terms of like hitting me right in the heart and then it took me on a little investigation because I didn't know Flannery O'Connor. And as I started reading more of her quotes, I actually looked for that book in the library and they don't have it. My library is like really not good. They never have the book that I want. I'm like, I don't think these books that I want are so obscure. Like, but but as I read more, I could read it online. I really just don't like reading on my device. I like holding a book. So I could get it. But in any case, just having a review of Flannery O'Connor's work, she was so sure of herself and ahead of her time with what
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
I just yeah, so I really, often wish that I had known her before, but I guess we come to the writers that when we come to them.
Sure. And it's always a process of discovery. I'm the same as you. I like to have a book in my hand. Last resort, I will read on a Kindle. But yeah, I'm always discovering new writers. And Flannery was amazing. And like you said, she was before her time. Um, but, and I loved, of course, I don't know if you're aware that she wrote sort of I came from a fundamentalist religious cult that I was raised in as a
Mhm.
child that I left as a teenager. But Flannery writes a lot in the language that I kind of know from that childhood. And anyway, you have to read her to know. So we don't need to totally excavate everything about Flannery today. But this quote, she was just a really wise woman, and the way that she presented herself and the way that she found a way to speak and to use her voice during the time in which she was writing, fascinates me. She was a devout Catholic, but she was a very progressive Catholic. So that never, sits right with me because I I don't really affiliate with any religion.
Yeah.
Um, However, I do am very connected with spirit. So but she speaks to a lot of truth, that that doesn't necessarily have to be framed in a religious manner, but I think maybe that made her a little more, acceptable at the time, I don't know, but yeah.
Yeah, definitely was a lot of I could feel that spirit and faith behind all of it. I didn't feel any, when I looked at other quotes, it was a similar faith, but with no religiosity
Yeah.
and no, there's no barrier to connecting to the one that lives in all of us, and is around us and is responsible for all of it, in my opinion. And it's interesting because what I also see from that quote is, really based on a lot of my faith too, that has progressed over the years of we do have everything within that we need. And it's finding that trust, which can be so wavering. Faith is something that does waver, and that inner trust of knowing that we do have everything that we need inside. So how does that work for you? How do you reconcile that?
Well, as we said before, when we before we went live, that really is the core of my writing, is the connection to that, original wholeness that is innate and, untouchable and sacred and within each and every one of us, whether or not we are able to access it for the very many reasons that uh, the barriers that we have to accessing it. It is there, and it is, absolutely, inviolable. That's a hard word to say.
Yeah.
But yeah, I write about that a lot, and really, O'Connor is deconstructing. That's a new word that she didn't have back then, and neither did I years ago when I left the religious cult and everything. We didn't have the language and the vocabulary that we now have to deconstruct religion,
Mhm.
in those traditions. But anyway, she was just deconstructing, um, home, the three places that we think of as home and that we call home.
Mhm.
And one of them is the past, and that's where you come from. And
Mhm.
we think of that as our home, right? And then one of them is the future where we think we are going.
Uh-huh.
And then the one is the imagined destination that if we can just get away from where we are, then we'll be home.
Right.
And then she summarizes it by saying, "Nothing outside you can give you any place. In yourself right now is all the place you've got, and that is home." And
Yes.
that's the true home, and that's our absolutely true home. And, T.S. Eliot, in the Four Quartets, that said that, basically, the end of all of our seeking or whatever is to come home and to know it for the first time, to recognize it for the first time. So it's really not a place that we go back to.
Right.
And people will say, remembering your wholeness or remembering who you are. It's really not about memory. It's about what always was, always is, and always will be. And so it's a recognition of
Mhm.
that in the moment rather than a memory.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think we know that our past informs our present, how and it does contribute to how we respond or react to life situations. But I often think about, wherever you go, there you are. We can't. I moved
Yeah.
with my family 5 years ago from Northern California to Southern California, and part of the reason why I knew I wanted to move and get us out of Silicon Valley was because it was just too much and too intense, and I couldn't think and I couldn't hear and I couldn't it was just too noisy energetically. COVID, the pandemic really made me even more sensitive, and I just so thankfully they trusted me enough to move, and living in the desert has really helped me be quiet. And even though I'm the same person, I think I've just remembered who I am more so now that I live in the desert, and I have more trust. I think that's the thing with faith, is that having that trust, and not being so worried about the future. I mean, these are the things that I write about a lot as well, as not is just trying to come back to the wholeness that exists here and now all the time. And when we think about the future, we're not present. So of
Mhm.
course we to think about the future because we worry about it, but worry doesn't get us anywhere, unfortunately. I
Mhm.
wish it did. I love staying up late at night worrying. It really helps me. Yeah.
Right, it makes a difference, right?
Yeah.
Well, when you mentioned going back to the question about faith, for me, my ex I wouldn't really, I don't really connect with that word, with faith.
Mhm,
As much as, I guess I would have to sort of break that down, is that my experience of this wholeness and this source and this resource deep within me, it's based on experience,
mhm,
not on faith. And so it doesn't require belief. There's no necessity of belief, which is where faith comes in, is having faith, having you believe and then you have faith, or that's the way that it was taught to me. And so if I have faith today, it's because of my experience, direct access and experience that has given me faith over time,
mhm,
and a practice of direct experience and a path of direct experience, that instead of having to believe, I can um, practice, be willing, and show up in the moment one day at a time. And then I begin to experience this connection and this divinity that operates in my life all the time. But that asking me to believe in that is a very different thing
mhm.
than actually directly experiencing it. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, so if you haven't experienced it, the question is usually, well, then how do I, if you, it's sort of like, your first job, you haven't had experience. So how do you get a first job? But it's really a matter of doing basic, simple things day by day in practice, like, a few minutes of meditation,
Mhm,
looking for something greater than yourself throughout your day, just small little practices and baby steps that we take that work and that help us and that bring us serenity and that we then have direct experience and results from. And so then that in the end is where my faith comes from. So it's not really as much faith or based in belief as in actual direct experience.
yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. I haven't, really experienced it in that way. I think for me, it is more about having Uh, I mean, a lot of the time for many years, it was for me about trying to find that divinity. Like, even though, so back in 2012, I met Ram Dass and we sat. So it was the beginning of my, really expansion of the journey. I mean, it first started with Wayne Dyer talking about the power of intention and all of that many years ago when my son was first born. But what I it was really interesting, like, going, to be with Ram Dass. He would always say these things, like, it's just being present. It's just, connecting to your soul, not your role, and all these things. And
Mm.
while I heard it all, I didn't start to believe it, really until I started to get quiet enough to hear it and to stop. And I think that when I started to, have a regular practice of meditation, I the synchronicities cannot be denied. Like the nods from the universe or wherever, like they just skyrocket. And when I don't have a practice, the nothing, it doesn't speak to
Mhm.
me. I don't see the magic of life as often. I still see it, and sometimes something will happen just to jolt me to get me back. Be like, hey, shake it up, remember? Like, "Hey, do you remember?"
Yeah, I really relate to that because I agree the synchronicity is a sign of where I'm at.
Yeah.
So when I'm really hooked up and really connected and really in alignment with my higher self and something greater than myself, then I began to experience synchronicity everywhere. Like the quote from Flannery O'Connor, that was a moment of synchronicity, and talking to you, that's a piece of synchronicity that showed up in my life, and so it begins to just be a common experience, and it's beautiful because it's like a language from the world, and you become it's like a mirror, and the inside is the same as the outside, and the outside is the same as the inside. In those, moments of true alignment, which are, not an everyday, every moment thing for me. I come in and out just like you were saying you do.
Yeah.
And then I'm reminded because it's like, oh, this is not feeling good. And I haven't been really doing my practices. I haven't been listening. I haven't been doing any kind of meditation practice, or I've sort of gotten lazy,
Mhm.
and I can get away with that, and I can eat potato chips and I can, boze out on TV, but it's like, I don't even know why. I always ask myself, why do I do that? Because it's so incredible to not do that.
Exactly, I know.
But, it's just that's why it's an ongoing practice. It's like, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, practice, practice.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and
So
there's no destination, right? Like, I mean, we could climb as many mountains as we want. There's always gonna be another one, and so
right.
we have these reserves, like, that's what like, I'm not here to get enlightened. I'm just here to, do the best that I can and enjoy this life that I have, as often, as I can, enjoying through gratitude and giving and, connecting. I'm somebody that really loves to connect with people and learn from different people. I'm somebody that always is wanting to learn more and more. So, well, okay, so I'm gonna ask you a question. So you, are a therapist, and you had mentioned that you don't practice as much anymore, but how did you make that transit? How have you helped your, clients in realizing that they have everything they need?
Well, just go read my Substack. There's nothing wrong with you, and there never was.
Yeah, exactly.
It's everything I write about is about that, and so everything, and basically that's something that isn't just limited to myself as a therapist, but it's just who I am,
Mhm,
and so it's just, you know, um, and in working with clients or with people in general, um, I meet people where they are. So wherever you are is just absolutely where I want to meet you. I don't, you're going to have your own experience of that. I could tell you that, I could give you all kinds of answers, but you need to have your own experience. And I think my role in that container is basically knowing the truth of your wholeness and
mhm.
being there to see that even though you don't.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then eventually more and more of that person um, manifests and embodies and begins to express and become in ways that they were blocked from before.
mhm, mhm.
So it's really relational, I think.
Yeah, it's really such an ongoing process. I've been in and out of therapy for many years, and I actually, it's interesting. I feel complete right now for the last few years, not needing therapy, but writing is my therapy, connecting
Yeah.
with friends, nature. So it's
Well, you're following your passion, right?
yeah, exactly.
And that's the real therapy. I'll just tell everybody listening right now. By the way, I don't lead with my credential. I'm not an expert here on Substack. I'm me, and all my many just
Facets.
in
Yeah,
myself. So
yeah.
anyway, I'm just here as myself, not as a role or an identity, but the key thing that I would offer for people about therapy, and sometimes, and there's nothing wrong with therapy. Therapy's great, and that can be very, very helpful. But one of the very key things in individuating and coming fully into my own was to tap into my passion, my desire, and my creativity. Absolutely. So my desire is my passion and my creativity. And so that's I love books and I love reading and I love writing. And so it's really my true calling above and beyond. my other role, which is seems to be in a role of, I don't even know what you would call it. It kind of hasn't been invented yet, but it's but it's the way that I share with other people and
Mhm.
help other people
Mhm.
and am in relationship with other people, maybe in a as a mentor or as a therapist or as a sponsor or as a friend or whatever, or as a
Guide.
as a mother, as a wife,
Yeah.
so, um, I may have lost my train of thought there.
Yeah, you're just talking about why, following passion, not needing
Oh,
therapy.
yes,
Yeah.
that's very important because when we tap into that, that is truly, in my opinion, is what saves our life. And in fact, Emily Rapp Black just wrote a book
Mhm.
called I Would Die If I Were You.
Mhm.
And it's notes on art and something else. And it's basically about this very thing, I think. And I've only read the first chapter because I'm going to save it until I can read it just before I have a conversation with her about it. But
Right.
she's really talking about how art saves our life.
Yeah.
And art is everything because life is art. And so whatever it is that makes us that gives us that spark and brings us alive and
Mhm.
that just engages us,
Mhm.
that's what saves us really and
Yeah.
truly. There's no answer out there. Like
Mhm.
Flannery said, Flannery really is, she's taking everything away except for immediate experience. She's completely destroyed it in that quote. She said, there's no external ground left.
Yeah.
Belief, belonging, identity, improvement, none of those things are
Mhm.
going to bring you home.
Yeah, 1,000%. I mean, if we hadn't left Silicon Valley, I never would be able to, like, I was like living my truth on the side, and I was, playing the
Yeah.
I was playing the role of corporate recruiter in really tough environments and, changing jobs every 18 months because of the nature of the business and the backstabbing and the intensity and and just never, fulfilled and knowing that it wasn't the truth of who I was. I mean, and, we do these things to survive as, as humans, as
Mhm.
parents, as men and women do it to survive. And it's the good and bad of capitalism, right? Like we're not allowed to be the artists that's within us. You can only do it on the side. So when I finally moved, it just the world opened up. And like I know that I'm meant to be a guide, of a sort, and a writer. And so I'm working on a book and it's going really slow, but I don't mind. It's I have to get strong enough to like I'm sitting here doing all these things on Substack, which I love because I love interacting on Substack and I love writing notes and I love reading all the Substacks, but I'm also realizing that I need to, there's such a balance I need to take away and go actually work on the damn book. So
Well, you are just delightful, and I love what you said about you were doing this on the side,
Mhm.
because that is, kind of what I mean, that's what I did for years and years. I'm really not doing me. I'm sort of hiding myself over here in my light under a bushel, so to speak, and trying to fulfill these roles. I'm really really was actually a shame to be me because I was never supported in that process. I was taught to be a role and to be what others needed me to be and to be what was right and how you're supposed to be. And Bob, we all are familiar with that. And as
Yeah.
we're all programmed and conditioned in that way, some to, larger degree than others. But so that thing of doing things on the side, but I have a little secret here that I would like to share. And that is as far as
I won't
dealing with
tell
things.
anyone. I won't tell anyone.
Don't tell anyone, but the whole thing of dealing with this capitalistic situation is that, and this is actually, a story in the Bible, and I'm not a religious person, but I'm very familiar with the Bible, and there's a lot of good stuff in there.
Yeah.
And the guy Paul in the Bible, um, I did not know this, but I found out that he was a disciple. He was called and he was preaching the gospel, right? And that was his calling. But every once in a while he would go make tents
Mhm.
So he would make tents because that supported his passion of
Oh.
spreading the gospel. And
Mhm.
so it's okay to give ourselves permission to go make some tents.
Yeah, absolutely.
But to know that that's all we're doing and that
Yeah.
it's for the purpose of supporting our passion
Yeah. Yeah.
rather than losing ourselves in the tent making and going, "I'm a tent maker." That's, it's well, some people are born to be a tent maker, but, Paul
Yeah.
was not. He was called to the gospel. So to really, like you were saying, like what I hear is that you're, you know, um, being true to yourself,
Mhm.
to thine own self be true, and hearing more and more what that truth is,
Yeah.
and getting more and more in alignment with that, step by step. So moving and all the different things you've done, and recognizing, oh, this is who I really am, and then all you have to do is be who you are.
Right. Right. And it's
It's
perfect.
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
It's absolutely perfect to just be who you are. And we're saying, like, playing all those roles and, planting the seeds. I mean, like, putting up those tents, those are just, like, seeds that were being planted to blossom when they were supposed to blossom, in a sense. Like, even though I was writing, on the side while I was working, and I was actually going through a really challenging time, with my children, and I, it gave me strength to write because I had to process, and I knew, well, at some point, my voice will be heard, and thankfully, I got my start with, Elephant Journal. I don't know if you know that
uh-huh,
publication.
I do. That's
Yeah,
great.
or
Yeah,
Bold.
yeah.
Yeah, Waylon Lewis, I'm really grateful for him for supporting me in that journey. I've published a bunch of articles on Elephant Journal, and it was all processing. It was all like processing essays, really. And so it was really very helpful, to get to be able to plant those seeds. And now that I'm here on Substack for over 2 years, it just keeps growing, and I keep finding my voice in other writers. And so, and I see that you're doing some, you're making, what's this, the whole thing that you're writing now? What is that all about? Is that
Yeah, that's
education or?
yes, it's a literary publication. Um, I'm I was the founding editor for Voices on Addiction at the Rumpus, if you
Mhm.
know the
Yeah.
Rumpus.
Yep.
And that column was, stories from across the spectrum of addiction and anybody, impacted by and affected by addiction. So it wasn't just limited to those of us who have an addiction or in recovery or struggling with addiction, but also with, family and society and basically, as we know, everyone in the world.
Mhm.
So, so we had nobody wanted. It was like there was a lot of stigma, and there's
Mhm.
less and less stigma about being able to talk about those things. So that column was about breaking the stigma, and it had a 9-year run, and um, and it was really awesome. And I feel like I was really privileged um, to be in service to that column and
Mhm.
to those voices. And so then we closed the column in May, and then I had, a number of people reaching out and sending me stories still. And so I decided in August, why don't I just go ahead and do a section on my Substack and continue to publish recovery stories. Only I've expanded the definition of recovery, which I already had with my Substack, recovery from anything.
Mhm.
So all of us are in recovery. So I
Yeah.
expanded the definition of the whole to include recovery from anything that disconnects us from ourselves.
Mhm.
So what we're talking about here, anything that disconnects us from that original wholeness and from that true self, that's the stories that I want to feature in the whole and that I have been. So we started off, I think I've had four editions so far. And
Nice.
yeah, so it's cool. Check out my Substack and there's some guidelines to how to submit.
Okay.
So it's
I
in there and it's in the there's nothing wrong with you and there never was. So you'll find it
Okay.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely would like to check that out. Yeah, absolutely. I definitely have some recovery stories.
And I'd love for you to write one. Absolutely. And there's another one, another piece that I just started in my Substack that's separate. That's called Writing from Wholeness. So
Mm.
that's a series that I just started, and I did the first one, and it's about being able to tap into that wholeness, and be able to write from that place, um, and not and it's really more about an orientation
Mhm.
more than a method.
Mhm.
And so it's an orientation on writing from wholeness. And so if you have a lot of hard stories
Yeah.
that, or even if you don't, that
Yeah.
that can really writing from wholeness for me makes all the difference in the my ability to write those hard stories.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's partially why I've been avoiding writing, my book because
Mhm.
they are really hard stories to write. I write a lot about mental illness and, how it hijacks a family and how, it just has completely rocked my world of, realizing who I am and what my role is, as a mother. And so it's, I do think that everything is a teacher. Like, I'm learning so much from you right now. Every interaction can be seen as a teacher, whether it's good or bad, I think. And it's really about perception and what you want to do with that. So that's kind of how I live my life, is just looking at everything as a something to learn from, and what I wanna take in and what I don't wanna take in, and being discerning to my own self and being true to myself. So I
I
appreciate
love
that
that.
you're expanding all of that. I'm excited to check it out.
Yeah, it should be fun to see where it goes. And it's a creative process and it's just fun. And
Yeah.
who knows? But that's where synchronicity comes in too, is these things are sparks that I follow. And
Mhm.
this writing from wholeness was another spark that just sort of came, and I just follow them and
Mhm.
see where they take me. And usually they take me to some pretty interesting places.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's why I have a podcast as well, and I was going to have you on the podcast, but I was thinking, what a much better way to just it's actually a lot of work, and as much as I love it, I was like, "Well, let's just rip the Band-Aid off. Why have the formality? Just come on live and just have a similar conversation like we would have had on the podcast." So, which I still love doing. It's the inquisitive, old recruiter in me that I was for so many years. It's just I like to talk to people, so
is it called Spicy Soul Mama
yeah,
podcast?
it's
Cool.
spicy.
Why, I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, I just recorded I've recorded 18, but I just or so yeah,
Wow.
I've actually recorded 20. I've released set not only I've released 17. The one that I just released a few weeks ago was with an astrologer tarot reader, my friend Nadine, and that was really fun because we all want to know what the stars are saying for what's happening right now. So she had some really positive things to say about for 2026, as much as it doesn't feel like things are very positive. I do think that things will become positive, and there are some positive stories happening amidst this chaos. And then I have coming out this weekend. My friend Nina Rao, who is Krishna Das's partner, and she's a teacher and chantress in her own right. So we talk about devotion and similar things, devotion and faith
Nice.
and parenting. And then I have and then I have a bunch of other podcasts coming out, being recorded with different mystics and teachers, because I do work for a company called the Shift Network, and it's all about expansion of consciousness. And so I'm in this
Oh, yeah,
world.
I know about the shift.
You
Yeah,
do?
that's great. Yeah,
Yeah, so
very
I
cool.
I I work with these amazing faculty members that are everything from, like, Druidism to Aramaic Jesus to Tai Chi
Yeah.
to, like, were you in Lemuria? Like, to meditations for empaths. Like, it's just, my mind is just, like, in this world. That's all I talk about and think about now, so
I have been you speak of astrology, I'm gonna definitely listen to that podcast. I have been into astrology since I was a girl,
Oh,
and I absolutely love it. And it is very, we are going in a completely new direction. Not necessarily, because we have to go through this whole disillusionment and collapse.
yes.
But beside that, as we shift into this new energy, we're going to be this new energy that I see as a builder energy. I see that as positive. Really, though, for some reason, what the mention of what we're looking at and what's ahead made me think of the Walk for Peace and the monks,
Mhm, yes.
and the way that they are demonstrating, um, directly demonstrating how to walk in peace in the midst of chaos and in the midst of turmoil, in the midst of violence, in the midst of everything that's happening. They just keep walking for peace. And so they're showing us how to do that. And I think the astrology, for some reason, I think that is the building energy that we're being called to.
Yes, yes. Well, I think we're having a global spiritual consciousness crisis. I think that's really what
Yeah.
it is. And so I think that we've gotten so far away from the truth. Many people have gotten so far away from the truth of who they are, and egos are running the show. And no longer can that be. And in my opinion, and ego helps us keep us safe. It helps to keep us safe, but I don't think that the greed and the ego should drive the world's beauty, basically.
Yeah. Well, as we know, the ego is here as a vehicle for the soul,
Yeah.
but the ego, unfortunately, may not know that. So,
In
so
many
it's a
cases.
process. It has to be trained.
Yeah, yeah, no, I mean, there's a lot of people that's also in Silicon Valley, like, people live from the neck up, and,
Yeah.
it really doesn't, create, a whole lot of goodness, frankly. It's just very self-serving, and so, yeah, so if you listen to the podcast, she's an award-winning, astrology tarot reader, and she's, really amazing. As friends, I read cards for myself and, do as part of my practice, but we read for each other sometimes, but she does offer a discount in the show. So you can, if you are
Oh,
inclined to
cool.
reading with her, you can get 15% off.
Nice.
Oh yeah.
There's
So
your old making tents capacity kicking in.
yeah,
Yeah, because that's how we pay the rent. We go make some tents and then we come back.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like I wouldn't be able to be this creative person if I wasn't making tents with the shift network. So
Right. Right. Exactly. But how cool that you could have it more aligned with who you are.
exactly. I mean, it
Yeah.
took me a long time. I really had to fight for that job, like, to find that job. I applied for so many different
Um,
kinds of jobs like that, and I don't even care that it's, like, not paying me what I used to earn because I'm so happy, and so, money doesn't bring
Fulfilled.
happiness.
Mhm.
It sure
No,
does
it
help,
doesn't.
but
No, it's good to get off that merry-go-round, isn't it?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's so good. Well, we have a lot of mutual things to check out with each other. I'm so glad we had the opportunity to speak. And hello to everybody who joined. And, if anybody wants to write anything or share anything, I'm really grateful you all showed up. So, and thank you, Kelly, for showing up.
You bet. Thank you, everyone.
All right, we'll see you soon. Take care.